Welcome in. And before we begin, let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is for you tonight. I always love seeing where in the world everyone is listening from. Tonight, we're going back to the very beginning of human history to explore how discovering fire changed our species forever. So, get cozy, relax, and let's begin. There was a time, long before cities, before language as we know it, before history had ever been written, when the world was darker than most people today could ever imagine. Not darker in spirit, but in truth. When the sun disappeared beneath the horizon, darkness did not simply fall. It consumed everything. There were no lanterns, no homes glowing softly in the distance, no streets lit by lamps, no comforting warmth waiting indoors. When night arrived, the world vanished into shadow. Imagine yourself there. Imagine standing in the middle of an endless prehistoric plain, the air growing colder by the minute as the last orange light of sunset disappears behind the horizon. Around you, there is no civilization, no walls, no shelter built by human hands beyond perhaps a crude pile of branches or the mouth of a shallow cave. The sky above stretches infinitely, black and cold, filled with stars brighter than anything we see in the modern world. Beautiful, yes, but also deeply unsettling, because beneath that sky, you are not the ruler of the earth. You are simply another creature, trying to survive the night. And in those ancient nights, humans were not hunters at the top of the food chain. They were vulnerable, weak by nature. We did not have claws. We did not have fangs. We were not especially fast. We could not smell danger from miles away, nor could we overpower the beasts that roamed the darkness around us. We were clever, yes, but in the earliest days of humanity, cleverness alone was often not enough. When the sun disappeared, fear arrived with it. The darkness of the prehistoric world belonged not to people, but to predators. Ancient lions stalked the plains, giant hyenas moved in packs, saber-toothed cats and other carnivores wandered through forests and grasslands, searching for food, and unlike humans, they were built for the dark. Their eyes adjusted to the shadows, their hearing sharpened in silence, their instincts came alive when night fell. Now imagine sitting in that darkness with your small tribe, pressed tightly together in silence. No one dares wander far. No one dares speak loudly. Around you, all you can hear is breathing, the distant rustle of wind through tall grass, and every now and then, the sound that made ancient hearts stop cold, the snap of a branch somewhere in the dark. Because when you heard something moving out there, you knew something might already be watching you. Anthropologists widely believe that before controlled fire, nighttime posed enormous survival risks to early humans because of predators, cold, and limited visibility. Fire later became a critical tool for nighttime safety and predator deterrence. The human body itself was not made for darkness. Our eyes, compared to nocturnal predators, were poor at seeing in low light. Our hearing was decent, but not extraordinary. Our sense of smell was weak. Once darkness fell, our ability to defend ourselves dropped dramatically. The ancient human likely spent night after night in constant tension, listening carefully for danger they could hear but not see. Sleep itself must have been dangerous. Imagine trying to rest, knowing that letting your guard down, even for a moment, could mean death. Some likely stayed awake in shifts, keeping watch while others attempted to sleep lightly. Some may have slept in trees, caves, or elevated places when possible, but even then, safety was never guaranteed. And beyond predators, there was the cold. Today, cold is inconvenient. In the ancient world, cold could kill. When temperatures dropped after sunset, especially during colder prehistoric eras and ice age conditions, early humans had very little protection. No insulated clothing, no heated shelter, no blankets beyond animal hides crudely wrapped around the body. Survival during freezing nights often meant huddling together for warmth, curling close beside one another, simply to preserve body heat until morning. Evidence suggests fire later allowed human groups to survive lower nighttime temperatures and expand into colder climates beyond tropical zones. Imagine the feeling. The bitter wind against your skin, the ache in your hands, the numbness creeping into your fingers and feet, the desperate instinct to curl inward and preserve warmth while praying the sunrise comes quickly enough. This was not an occasional hardship. This was every night, every winter, every storm, every cold season. To be an early human was to live in constant negotiation with discomfort, hunger, and fear. And hunger itself never rested. Early humans lived as hunter-gatherers, surviving day to day through foraging, scavenging, and hunting when possible. Food was never guaranteed. Many days likely passed with little to eat. Hunger was a near constant presence in prehistoric life. Imagine waking each morning, not knowing if your tribe would eat that day, spending hours searching for roots, berries, nuts, or prey, walking mile after mile beneath the heat of the sun, then returning with almost nothing. And if the hunt failed too many times, starvation began. Life before civilization was not simply difficult. It was relentless. Every sunrise brought another test, another challenge, another gamble between survival and death. Yet despite all of this, humans endured. There is something quietly extraordinary about that, because while our ancestors may have lacked strength, they possessed resilience. Again and again, generation after generation, they survived in a world that seemed built against them. They adapted, they learned, they observed, and perhaps most importantly, they imagined. That imagination, that ability to look at the world not simply as it is, but as it could be, would one day separate humanity from every other creature on Earth. But before tools transformed the land, before language shaped thought, before cities touched the sky, there was one discovery, one force, one moment of understanding that changed everything forever. And it began, likely with fear. Somewhere, long ago, perhaps after a storm, lightning struck dry earth, or a tree, or open grassland. And suddenly the night was broken by something no human had ever fully understood. Flames. Wild, bright, violent, alive. A force that glowed brighter than the sun reflected in water. A force that moved, crackled, hissed, and consumed whatever it touched. Something beautiful and terrifying. Researchers widely believe early humans first encountered usable fire through natural wildfires, likely caused by lightning strikes, before learning to preserve or eventually create it themselves. Imagine seeing it for the first time, not knowing what it is, not understanding why trees suddenly glow orange, why heat blasts against your skin from far away, why the night itself suddenly shines. Imagine your tribe standing at a distance, frozen in awe, watching the world burn. At first, they likely feared it. How could they not? Fire destroyed everything it touched. It spread unpredictably. It roared louder than animals. It devoured forests. It left only smoke and ash behind. But perhaps After fear faded, something else appeared. Curiosity. Because humans have always been curious. And somewhere in that distant past, someone must have looked at the dying remains of a burned forest, at a glowing branch still hot with embers, and wondered something no animal had ever wondered before. Can this be used? That question would change human history forever. And though those first ancient people could not possibly know it then, they stood at the edge of the single most important technological leap in all of human existence. Because fire would not simply warm them, it would transform them. It would change where humans could live, what humans could eat, how humans slept, how humans socialized, how humans thought. It may even have changed the very structure of the human brain itself. But in that first moment, none of that was known yet. All they knew was that for the first time, the darkness no longer seemed unbeatable. There must have been a moment, somewhere in the deep and forgotten past, when human eyes saw fire for the very first time. Not a small flame in a controlled hearth, not the gentle glow of a campfire, but wildfire, untamed, violent, and terrifying. Imagine yourself standing there. You are not modern. You do not know science. You do not know what lightning is, or heat, or combustion, or nature's hidden laws. You are simply an early human, standing barefoot on the earth, looking up as dark clouds gather overhead. The sky begins to rumble. Strange sounds roll above you, deep, powerful, almost alive. Then suddenly, a crack splits the heavens open. A bolt of white light tears through the sky. It strikes the earth somewhere in the distance. And moments later, smoke begins to rise. At first, perhaps, your tribe watches from afar. No one understands what has happened. No one knows what that strange glowing light now dancing between the trees truly is. But as the sun begins to disappear and darkness starts to spread, something impossible begins to shine against the night. Orange, bright, moving, alive. A forest burns. To modern eyes, fire is familiar, almost ordinary. But to the first humans who ever saw it, it may have seemed supernatural. A thing not born from flesh, nor water, nor stone, but from the sky itself, a force that glowed brighter than the moon and moved like no creature ever seen before. Anthropologist J.J. Gowlett, one of the leading researchers on fire in human evolution, explains that lightning strikes and natural bushfires were likely the first way early humans encountered fire. Large-scale natural fires would have made fire a familiar, though mysterious, part of prehistoric life. Imagine how frightening it must have looked. Trees exploding into sparks, animals screaming and fleeing in panic, heat pushing against your skin from far away, smoke rising into the heavens as if the earth itself were opening. You would not walk toward it. You would run, because at first, fire was not seen as useful. It was seen as danger. And yet, humans are different from other animals in one critical way. Where other creatures run from things they do not understand, humans often come back. Eventually, after the flames died down and the forest quieted, someone, perhaps the bravest, perhaps the most curious, must have approached the remains. Imagine walking slowly into that blackened forest, ash covering the ground beneath your feet, smoke still rising into the cold air, the smell of burnt earth everywhere around you, and there, lying among the ruins, something still glows, a branch, burning softly, still warm, still alive somehow. Imagine staring at it in confusion, no longer roaring, no longer destroying, now simply glowing quietly in the dark. And perhaps, in that moment, curiosity overcame fear. Researchers from the Smithsonian Human Origins Program explain that the long relationship between humans and fire likely began not with creation, but observation and gradual experimentation. Early humans probably first learned to preserve natural fire before they learned to produce it themselves. So, perhaps one human reached forward, slowly, carefully, and perhaps, the moment their fingers came too close, pain shot through their skin. Heat. Another mystery. This glowing thing was not merely bright, it burned. But still, they watched. And perhaps they noticed something else. Animals would not come near it. Think about that realization. The same predators that stalked them every night, the same beasts whose glowing eyes haunted the darkness, stayed away from fire. Wolves circled at a distance. Big cats hesitated. Scavengers lingered far from the flames. For the first time in human history, something frightened the predators more than the humans. Imagine realizing that. Imagine standing beside that burning branch and seeing the darkness itself retreat around you. For the first time ever, the night no longer felt endless, no longer untouchable, no longer entirely controlled by fear. Of course, early humans probably did not understand all of this immediately. Discovery was almost certainly gradual, slow, messy, full of mistakes. Some likely fled from fire for generations before others dared approach it. Some may have accidentally burned themselves. Some may have feared it was magic or anger from the sky. But over many years, perhaps many centuries, humans would have begun noticing patterns. Fire gave warmth. Fire created light. Fire transformed the darkness itself. And perhaps, slowly, the greatest question of all began forming in the human mind. Can we keep it? Because seeing fire once was not enough. Wildfire disappears. Lightning fades. Storms pass. If humans wanted fire, they needed a way to preserve it. And this may have been one of the first great challenges in technological history. According to paleoanthropologist Brianna Pobener of the Smithsonian and Yale researcher Ellery Fromm, evidence suggests early humans first likely learned to maintain and preserve naturally sourced fire before ever learning how to ignite it on demand. Imagine trying to carry fire for the first time. A burning stick in trembling hands, smoke in your face, heat on your skin. Walking carefully, terrified it might die before you return home. Back then, losing fire may have meant losing something irreplaceable, because if you could not create it yet, and your fire went out, you had to wait for nature to give it again. Another storm, another lightning strike, another wildfire. Maybe weeks away, maybe months. So suddenly, keeping fire alive became one of the most important responsibilities imaginable. Someone likely stayed awake watching embers. Someone gathered wood constantly. Someone learned how to protect glowing coals beneath ash so they would survive the night. And in doing so, humanity began its first relationship with control. Not full control, not mastery, but stewardship. The beginning of understanding that nature could perhaps be guided, shaped, kept. And that realization may have changed how humans saw themselves forever. Because before fire, humans adapted to the world. After fire, humans slowly began adapting the world to themselves. It is difficult to overstate how profound that mental shift was. Before this, nature happened to humans. Storms happened. Winter happened. Darkness happened, but fire was different. Fire was something humans could possess. And with possession came possibility. Imagine your tribe that night, for the very first time, gathered around flickering light. Faces glowing orange in the darkness, shadows dancing on cave walls, warmth touching skin even as cold wind moves outside. Imagine how impossible that must have felt. Children staring in wonder, adults silent with disbelief. The darkness pushed back just far enough to reveal the faces of those around you. For the first time, night was no longer empty. It had become a place where people could gather, sit, look at one another, stay awake after sunset. Some anthropologists theorize that this may have fundamentally changed human social development, allowing more time for communication, bonding, and eventually storytelling after dark. Harvard primatologist Richard Wrangham has argued fire radically transformed not just diet, but also social structure and behavior. And perhaps, just perhaps, the very first stories in human history were told beside those first flames. A parent pointing upward at the stars. A hunter retelling the day's journey. Children listening quietly while shadows moved across stone walls. And if that is true, then fire did not simply warm the human body. It warmed the human spirit. It gave humanity more than survival. It gave us evenings. It gave us gathering. It gave us time to think. And perhaps it gave birth to imagination itself. But humanity's journey with fire was only beginning. Because seeing fire and keeping fire were not enough. Soon, humans would want more. Soon, they would ask the next impossible question. What if we could make it ourselves? And once that question was asked, the world would never be the same again. At first, fire was something to fear. It roared through forests without warning. It devoured trees older than memory itself. It left behind only smoke, ash, and silence. To the earliest humans, it must have seemed less like a tool and more like a living force. Something wild, something angry, something not meant to be touched. And yet, fear alone has never defined humanity. Because what separates humans from nearly every other creature is this. Eventually, we begin to ask questions. Imagine yourself standing at the edge of a blackened forest once again. The flames that once towered high into the sky are gone now. Only smoke remains. The ground beneath your feet is warm. The air smells strange, burnt, dry, heavy. Around you lie fallen trees, cracked stone, and the remains of a world transformed in only a few hours. Most animals would keep their distance. They would smell the danger and leave. But you stay. You stare at what remains. You wonder, and perhaps, slowly, the fear that once kept you frozen begins to change into something else. Curiosity. It may have taken generations for this shift to happen. Perhaps many tribes feared fire long after first seeing it. Perhaps some never dared approach it at all. But at some point in our distant past, one human being, whose name will never be known, must have looked at fire not simply as danger, but as mystery. Anthropologist J.A.J. Gowlett suggests that human control of fire likely emerged over a long and gradual period, not through one sudden invention, but through repeated observation, experimentation, and increasing familiarity with natural fire events. Imagine crouching near a dying flame. Not too close, Still cautious, still afraid, but close enough to feel the warmth against your skin. And perhaps, for the first time, you notice how comforting that warmth feels. Think about that moment. For all of human existence until then, warmth had come only from sunlight, body heat, and shelter. But now, here was something new. Warmth that existed even after sunset. Warmth that could exist in darkness. Perhaps someone reached their hands toward it, and perhaps someone noticed how numb fingers became alive again when held near the heat. And in that instant, a realization may have formed. This thing that destroys can also comfort. That thought alone would have changed everything, but curiosity did not stop there. Soon, early humans would have noticed strange changes in the world after fire passed through it. Burned landscapes looked different, smelled different, even tasted different. Researchers believe that early humans may have first encountered cooked meat accidentally after scavenging animals killed in wildfires. Burned carcasses left behind by natural fires could have introduced humans to the taste and texture of cooked food long before intentional cooking began. This theory has been discussed by biological anthropologist Richard Wrangham, whose work focuses heavily on fire and cooking in human evolution. Imagine that discovery. An animal caught in a wildfire, its body blackened, changed. Normally you would eat raw meat, tough and bloody, tearing it slowly with effort. But now, something is different. The flesh is softer, warmer, easier to chew. It tastes richer somehow, and maybe no one understood why. But everyone noticed. Fire did not simply warm things, it transformed them. That must have seemed almost magical. Wood became ash, meat became tender. Darkness became light, cold became warmth. Fire was not just a force anymore. It was a thing that changed the world itself. And once humans realized that, fear alone could no longer contain it. Imagine now your tribe gathering around a dying branch still glowing at its tip. Everyone watching carefully. Someone pokes it with a stick. Another throws dry grass nearby. Suddenly the flame grows. A reaction. Cause and effect. Perhaps for the first time, humans understood something incredible. Fire could be fed. It could grow stronger or weaker, depending on what you gave it. That realization may have been among humanity's first experiences with controlling a natural force. Archaeologist Francesco Berna, whose research has helped identify some of the oldest known hearths used by humans, notes that repeated use of fire likely taught early humans basic patterns of maintenance, understanding fuel, heat, and airflow, even before formal fire-making techniques existed. And slowly, humans would begin experimenting. They would throw branches into flame, leaves, dry grass, bones perhaps. They would watch what burned quickly and what lasted longer. They would begin learning not through science, but through instinct and repetition. And with every observation, fire became a little less mysterious, a little less divine, a little more understood. Still dangerous, yes. Still feared, yes, but no longer untouchable. Imagine now the first human daring enough to hold a burning stick, to lift a branch with fire at its end, to carry it through darkness while the tribe watches in stunned silence. That image must have felt unbelievable. A human holding light, holding warmth, holding power. And perhaps in that moment, for the very first time in history, early humans no longer felt completely helpless before nature, because now they carried something nature itself had made. something dangerous, something powerful. And it belonged, however briefly, to them. Of course, mistakes would have happened. Branches dropped accidentally, fires lost in rain, burns suffered through clumsy handling. Learning always carries pain, but humans kept trying, because curiosity, once awakened, rarely sleeps again. Soon, tribes may have begun preserving embers after natural fires ended. They likely transported burning wood carefully and protected coals under ash to keep them alive as long as possible. Archaeological evidence suggests habitual fire use by Homo erectus and later species may date back hundreds of thousands of years, though precise dates remain debated among scholars. Some evidence points to controlled fire use as early as around 1 million years ago, in sites such as Wonderwork Cave in South Africa. Research by Francesco Berna and colleagues supports this possibility. And perhaps, most importantly, fire began changing the way humans thought. Because before fire, humans reacted. After fire, humans experimented, observed, tested, learned. It taught patience, it taught caution, it taught planning. Because fire had to be watched, protected, managed. It could not simply be used thoughtlessly. And in learning to care for fire, humans may have been learning something even greater: responsibility. Imagine being the tribe member chosen to watch the flame through the night. Everyone sleeps around you. The darkness waits beyond the firelight, and your task is simple but vital. Keep it alive, because if it dies, warmth dies with it, light dies with it, safety dies with it. That kind of responsibility changes a person. And perhaps, in ways we cannot fully understand today, the act of caring for fire helped shape human society itself, teaching cooperation, shared duty, and trust. Because fire was too important for one person alone. It belonged to everyone, and so, night after night, early humans gathered around it, watched it, fed it, protected it, learned from it, and slowly, fear transformed completely. Fire was no longer merely something humans feared. It had become something humans respected, something humans needed, something humans could not imagine living without. But still, there remained one great limitation. Humans could preserve fire. Humans could feed fire. Humans could carry fire. Yet they still could not create it. Not yet. They remained dependent on nature's mercy, waiting for storms, waiting for lightning, waiting for chance. And eventually, that would no longer be enough. Because the next great leap in human history would come when someone dared ask, what if we no longer had to wait? There comes a moment in nearly every great human discovery when observation is no longer enough. At first, early humans watched fire from afar. Then they approached it. Then they studied it. Then they learned to keep it alive. But eventually, a new thought must have entered the human mind. What if fire did not need to stay where nature placed it? What if it could be taken? Imagine yourself once again, standing before the dying remains of a wildfire. The towering flames have long since faded. The forest is quiet now, the smoke thinner, the ash settling softly onto the blackened ground. Around you lie broken branches and fallen trees, and among them, glowing pieces of wood still burn with quiet orange light. And for the first time, someone dares to reach for one, not with bare hands, not carelessly, but with caution. A stick is used to lift the burning branch, slowly, carefully, as if holding something sacred. The tribe watches in silence because what is happening feels impossible. A human being is not simply looking at fire anymore, they are carrying it. Imagine how powerful that moment must have felt. To hold in your hands something that once only came from storms and destruction, something that belonged to the sky, now walking beside you, a glowing flame cutting through the darkness while others stare in awe. And perhaps in that moment, humanity crossed another invisible line. Because from then on, fire was no longer only something discovered, it became something possessed. Anthropologists widely believe the earliest stage of human fire control likely involved collecting and preserving natural fire from lightning-caused wildfires before humans developed the ability to ignite it themselves. Paleoanthropologist John Gowlett notes that transporting naturally sourced flames may have been one of the first practical uses of controlled fire. But carrying fire was not easy. Imagine trying to transport something so fragile and so dangerous. The branch is hot. Smoke fills the air around you. Ash drifts into your face. One careless movement and the flame could burn you, or go out completely. Wind might extinguish it. Rain might kill it. If the wood burns too quickly, it dies before you return. So, perhaps the tribe moved quickly, walking carefully through darkening land, protecting the flame like something precious, shielding it from wind with their bodies, feeding it dry twigs along the way whenever it began to weaken, because by now they likely understood something very important. Fire could die, and if it died, it might not come back for weeks or months. Without the knowledge to create it from nothing, early humans were still entirely dependent on preserving every flame they had. Losing fire was not a small inconvenience. It may have meant losing warmth, safety, and survival all at once. Researchers from the Smithsonian Human Origins Program explain that before ignition methods were developed, maintaining fire may have required continuous preservation of embers over long periods of time. Some groups likely kept flames burning almost constantly to avoid losing access to fire. Imagine the first time fire entered a human shelter, perhaps a cave, perhaps a crude shelter of wood and hides. At first, everyone would watch from a distance, the glow filling the darkness, orange light dancing against stone walls, warmth spreading into spaces that had always been cold. For the first time in history, darkness itself was pushed back by human hands. And suddenly, night looked different. Think of how revolutionary that must have felt. Before fire, sunset meant retreat, silence, fear, stillness. But now the tribe could remain awake. They could see one another after dark, speak after dark, move after dark. The day no longer ended when the sun disappeared. Fire had extended time itself. Harvard anthropologist Richard Wrangham argues that fire dramatically altered human daily life by extending waking hours, increasing social interaction, and allowing early humans to remain active after sunset. Imagine yourself sitting there, a child in the tribe perhaps, watching flames flicker in front of you, your family gathered around in silence. No predators approaching, no freezing wind touching your skin, no endless darkness surrounding your vision. Only warmth, only light, only safety. Perhaps, for the very first time, ancient humans felt what we today would call comfort. And comfort changes people, because once you know what safety feels like, you never want to lose it. Soon, protecting fire would have become one of the tribe's greatest priorities. Imagine assigning one person the responsibility of tending the flame, feeding it through the night, watching the embers, ensuring it never faded too low, because by now everyone understood this was not just useful, it was essential. Evidence from early archaeological hearths suggests repeated, organized use of fire by early human groups, indicating that maintaining and tending flames became a routine and socially important activity. Archaeologist Francesco Berna identified some of the earliest hearth evidence showing repeated structured fire use. And slowly, humans learned how to make fire last longer. Perhaps they discovered that thick wood burned slowly, that dry branches burned hotter than wet ones, that covering embers lightly with ash preserved heat. These were simple discoveries, but each one mattered, because every small lesson brought humans closer to mastery. Imagine someone waking before dawn to find the flames nearly gone. Only red embers remain. Panic sets in. Quickly they gather dry grass, twigs, leaves. They blow gently, and suddenly the ember glows brighter. Smoke rises. Flame returns. Another lesson learned. Fire could be reborn. That realization must have felt almost miraculous. It meant flame was not simply alive or dead. It could sleep and awaken. And with each passing season, early humans likely became better and better at protecting their flames. Soon, fire may have become the center of camp life. Everything gathered around it. Meals, rest, protection, conversation. Some researchers believe the campfire became one of the earliest organizing points of human social structure. Anthropologist Polly Weissner found evidence suggesting firelight extended social interaction into nighttime, strengthening relationships and encouraging storytelling among hunter-gatherer groups. Imagine the emotional power of that. After thousands of years of darkness ruling every night, humans had carved out a small circle of safety in the center of the wilderness. Beyond the firelight was danger, but within it, there was family, warmth, belonging. That glowing circle in the dark may have become the first true human home, not a building, not a village, just people gathered around flame. And perhaps this was when humanity first began feeling separate from nature. Before fire, humans lived inside nature's rules completely. After fire, they had begun bending those rules. The cold no longer controlled them fully. The dark no longer controlled them fully. The predators no longer controlled them fully. And all because of one thing, a small, burning flame. But still, there remained a problem. Fire could be carried. Fire could be protected. Fire could be preserved. Yet every flame still began with luck. A storm, a wildfire, an accident. Humanity had learned how to keep fire, but not how to summon it. Not yet. And soon, that would become the next obsession. Because once humans tasted power, they wanted independence. And somewhere in the ages to come, someone would begin wondering, what if fire could be made whenever we wished? For countless generations, humanity lived at the mercy of chance. If lightning struck, they had fire. If the forests burned, they had warmth. If nature gave them flame, they could survive a little easier. But if no storms came, if no trees burned, if the last ember died in the cold night, then everything they had built around fire vanished with it. And perhaps that helplessness slowly became unbearable. Imagine yourself there. Your tribe has spent weeks preserving a single flame, feeding it day and night, protecting it from rain, from wind, from carelessness. It has become the center of your life, the source of warmth, the reason predators keep their distance, the glow that makes the darkness feel less endless. Then one morning, after a heavy rain, you wake to silence. No crackling, no warmth, no light. The fire is gone, only wet ash remains. Imagine the feeling that must have caused the panic, the frustration, the fear of knowing you may not see flame again for weeks, perhaps longer, because at some point, humans must have realized something painful. It was not enough to keep fire. They needed to learn how to make it. And so began one of the greatest challenges in all of early human history, the search for a way to create flame from nothing. Imagine the patience that would have taken. No instructions, no science, no examples to follow, only observation, experimentation, and endless failure. Researchers believe fire-making technology likely developed only after humans had already controlled and preserved natural fire for very long periods. The process of learning ignition was probably gradual and experimental, not sudden. Archaeologist Andrew Sorensen, who studies prehistoric fire technologies, notes that ignition methods likely emerged through repeated tool experimentation over thousands of years. Perhaps it began with stones. Early humans already used stones for tools. They struck rocks together to create sharp edges for cutting meat, scraping hides, and crafting weapons. And maybe, during one of those moments, someone noticed something unusual. A spark, small, brief, almost invisible. Imagine seeing that for the first time. Two stones collide, and for a split second, light flashes between them. Perhaps no one understood it at first. Maybe they tried again. Another strike, another spark. Again, until finally someone realized the stones themselves could create tiny pieces of fire. And suddenly, the impossible no longer felt impossible. Experimental archaeology suggests prehistoric humans likely discovered sparks through flint knapping, the process of shaping stone tools. Repeated striking of flint against pyrite or iron-rich stone can produce visible sparks, possibly leading to intentional fire-making methods. Archaeologist Andrew Sorensen has written extensively on this process. Imagine the excitement of that discovery. The realization that fire might not belong only to storms anymore, that perhaps human hands could summon it. Of course, sparks alone were not enough. A spark dies quickly, so the next lesson had to be learned. What catches fire easily? And slowly, perhaps painfully, humans experimented. Dry grass, leaves, tree bark, bird nests, dead moss. Some materials failed. Some smoked, some burned too quickly. And then one day, one spark landed on the right bundle. Smoke began rising. A tiny ember formed. Someone blew gently. And suddenly, flame. Imagine that moment. Not borrowed from lightning. Not stolen from wildfire. Not carried from nature. Created by human hands. That single instant may have been one of the most important moments in the history of our species. Because from that day forward, humanity no longer waited for nature's permission. Anthropologists consider fire production one of the earliest examples of humans deliberately creating and controlling an environmental force. According to Paola Villa, curator of archaeology at the University of Colorado Museum, intentional ignition represents a major leap in cognitive and technological development. Imagine how that must have changed the human mind. Before, nature gave and took. Now, humans could create whenever they wished, wherever they wished. Need warmth? Make fire. Need light? Make fire. Need safety? Make fire. For the first time ever, survival was less dependent on luck. And once that happened, everything changed. Soon, tribes likely taught younger generations how to do it. The process would become tradition, a skill passed from elder to child, one of the first forms of technological knowledge shared across generations. Imagine a young child sitting beside an elder, watching carefully as stones are struck together, watching sparks fly, watching smoke rise, watching a miracle happen, and learning this is how we survive. Fire making itself became not just practical, but sacred in many early societies. Anthropologists note that technologies essential to survival often gained ritual and symbolic meaning in prehistoric communities. Over time, humans likely developed new methods, not just striking stones, but friction. Imagine someone spinning a stick against wood repeatedly. Fast, faster, heat building through movement, smoke appearing from dust. Then ember, the friction fire drill, one of humanity's oldest fire-making methods, would become common in many ancient cultures across the world. According to survival historians and primitive technology researchers, friction-based ignition methods may have emerged independently in multiple prehistoric societies after stone spark methods. Imagine the pride that came with mastering such a skill. To be the one who could create flame from cold wood and stone, you would not simply be useful. You would be admired, respected, perhaps even feared a little, because to others, it may have seemed like magic. A person who commands fire, a person who brings warmth from emptiness. And once humans mastered this skill, the world itself grew smaller. No place felt too dark, too cold, too dangerous. Because wherever humans traveled now, they could bring civilization with them. Not full civilization, of course, but its first spark, its first foundation, its first proof that the world could be shaped by human will. And maybe most importantly, for the first time ever, humanity no longer merely survived nature. They had begun mastering it. Think about how profound that is. For millions of years, life on Earth simply adapted. Animals evolved to fit the world. But humans had begun making the world fit them. Cold nights became warm. Dark nights became bright. Raw food became cooked. Fearful camps became homes. All because one day, someone refused to accept waiting. Someone looked at the flame and thought, we can do this ourselves. And from that thought, everything changed. Because once humanity learned to create fire, there was no going back, only forward. Only greater discoveries, only bigger ambitions. And with each new flame sparked from stone or wood, humans stepped a little farther away from being simple animals, and a little closer toward becoming something entirely new. For most of early human history, warmth was a luxury, something temporary, something fragile, something borrowed only from the sun. And when the sun disappeared beyond the horizon, so did comfort. The air would cool, the winds would sharpen, the earth itself would begin to feel colder beneath bare feet. And for ancient humans, cold was never simply unpleasant. Cold was danger. Imagine yourself there. The sun has set, and night begins to spread across the land. The warmth of the day leaves quickly, replaced by biting air that creeps into your skin. The wind moves across the open plains, slipping through your clothing, if you even have any at all. Your hands ache. Your breath fogs before your face. The ground beneath you is hard, frozen, and merciless. There are no walls to keep out the cold. No blankets, no heated shelter waiting nearby. Only darkness and the freezing night. Now, imagine this, not for one evening, but for entire seasons. Because much of early human existence unfolded during periods of significant climatic instability. Long before modern civilization, Earth entered repeated glacial periods, what we now call ice ages, when vast parts of the planet became colder, harsher, and far less forgiving. According to paleoclimatologists at the Smithsonian National Museum of Natural History, early humans lived through multiple glacial and interglacial cycles, with dramatic shifts in temperature and habitat shaping human survival and migration. Imagine what that meant. Entire landscapes covered in frost, long winters that stretched endlessly, cold winds cutting through valleys and plains. Without warmth, humans would have been trapped, confined to warmer climates where survival remained possible, unable to move north, unable to settle colder lands, unable to expand. But then came fire. Imagine the first winter night spent beside flame. The same icy wind still blows outside. The frost still clings to the earth, but this time, your hands are warm. Your skin no longer burns from the cold. The freezing darkness remains beyond the firelight, but inside its glow, there is comfort. For the first time in human history, winter becomes survivable. Think about how revolutionary that must have felt. For generations, cold had ruled over human movement. If the climate grew too harsh, tribes had to flee. If winter grew too long, many simply died. But now humans could resist the cold. Anthropologist Richard Potts, director of the Smithsonian Human Origins Program, notes that fire likely played a major role in allowing early humans to survive colder environments and adapt to increasingly variable climates. Imagine the confidence that must have created to look at a freezing night and know you no longer had to fear it in the same way. To know that wherever dry wood could be found, warmth could be created. Suddenly, the world grew larger. Places once too cold to inhabit became possible. Snow-covered valleys, northern forests, windy plains, all of them could now be explored. Fire had not simply made humans warmer. It had expanded the map of the world itself. Archaeological and evolutionary researchers widely agree that fire use helped support the migration of early humans into colder northern regions of Europe and Asia. Without controlled fire, long-term habitation in these climates would have been extremely difficult. Paleoanthropologist Chris Stringer of the Natural History Museum has highlighted fire as a key adaptation in human expansion. Imagine your tribe moving northward for the first time. The land unfamiliar, the air colder, the nights longer, yet still. You continue, because now every night you stop and build flame, and wherever the fire burns, home follows. This may be one of the most beautiful truths in all of human history. Fire allowed humans to carry comfort with them, no longer tied entirely to warm caves or tropical climates. Humans could now create safety almost anywhere. And this changed not just survival, but ambition. Because once humans realized they could survive places once thought impossible, curiosity would push them further. Higher mountains, colder valleys, farther lands. Step by step, humanity spread across the earth, and through all of it, fire traveled beside them. Imagine ancient families gathered during winter storms. Outside, snow falls heavily. Wind howls across the land. Trees bend beneath freezing gusts. But inside the shelter of stone or hide, there is orange light. Children sleeping peacefully. Adults resting quietly. Warmth filling the air. Not because the weather changed, but because humans learned to create their own climate. That may sound small to us now, but in truth, it was one of the earliest forms of environmental mastery ever achieved by any species. Humans were no longer simply enduring the world, they were changing their experience of it. And warmth did more than prevent freezing. It preserved strength. Imagine hunting in freezing weather with numb fingers and shaking limbs. Movement becomes slower, reactions slower, muscles tighter. But with warmth at night, the body recovers better. The mind rests easier. Energy is conserved. Researchers in evolutionary anthropology note that thermal regulation provided by fire likely reduced physical stress and increased survival rates in colder conditions. This would have offered major evolutionary advantages to groups with reliable fire access. Fire may even have changed how humans slept. Imagine lying down before fire existed, cold ground beneath you, wind against your skin, muscles tense from shivering. Now, imagine sleeping after fire, warmth nearby, gentle crackling sounds, the soft glow of embers through the dark, for perhaps the first time ever. True rest. That kind of rest changes everything. Better sleep means better recovery. Better recovery means better hunting. Better hunting means stronger tribes. All from one simple flame. And beyond the physical, warmth also changes emotion. There is something deeply comforting about fire. Even today, thousands of years later, people still gather around fireplaces, candles, campfires. We still feel drawn to warmth and flickering light. It calms us, grounds us, makes us feel safe. Psychologists and anthropologists suggest that this attraction may be deeply rooted in our evolutionary past. Fire became associated not only with survival, but with comfort, safety, and social connection. Perhaps that instinct began here, in those freezing prehistoric nights, when fire meant the difference between suffering and peace, when its warmth wrapped around exhausted bodies and reminded early humans, you will survive this night. And maybe most importantly, fire taught humans that nature's hardships could be overcome. The cold had once felt unstoppable, unbeatable, a force greater than anything humans could challenge. But now, humans had challenged it and won. Imagine what that realization must have done to the human spirit. If cold could be defeated, what else could be? What other impossible things might someday become possible? Perhaps this was when humanity first began truly believing in progress, that life did not have to remain as it had always been, that suffering could be reduced, that the world could be shaped, and all because of warmth in the dark. But the cold was only one enemy fire defeated, because while warmth made winter survivable, another truth was becoming clear in the firelight. Something else feared flames even more than frost ever had, the predators. And soon, humanity would discover that fire did not just protect them from the cold. It protected them from the creatures that hunted them in the dark. Before fire, humanity lived in fear of the dark, not because darkness itself was evil, but because of what moved within it. When the sun disappeared and the last light of day faded beneath the horizon, the world changed. The land that had belonged to humans during daylight became something else entirely. The sounds grew quieter, then stranger. The wind seemed colder. Every rustle in the distance carried meaning. Every broken twig in the night could signal danger, because when darkness came, predators awoke. Imagine yourself there. The night is silent except for the sound of your breathing. Your tribe sits close together, huddled in darkness, unable to see more than a few feet in front of you. Beyond your vision lies only blackness, endless and uncertain. Then suddenly, a sound, soft footsteps in the distance, branches shifting, breathing that does not belong to your people. And then, eyes. Two small, glowing reflections staring from the dark, watching, waiting. This was the reality of prehistoric life. Now, as the night grows quieter and the world slowly begins to rest, imagine those first humans once more, sitting together beneath endless stars, their fire burning softly, children asleep beside them, the elders speaking in hushed voices, the hunters resting after the day's journey, and above them, the same stars you see tonight. Because though thousands of years have passed, though the world has changed beyond imagination, in some small way, we are still them, still gathering in warmth, still telling stories in the night, still searching for light in darkness, and perhaps we always will be. So tonight, as you rest, as your eyes grow heavy and sleep slowly finds you, remember this: every home you know, every comfort you feel, every light glowing softly in the dark around you exists because one day, long ago, someone reached toward the fire and chose not to be afraid. And for that, the whole world changed. So, thank you, truly, for spending this quiet journey with me tonight. Thank you for listening. Thank you for wondering. And thank you for traveling back through time with me to the very beginning of it all. If this story brought you peace, or wonder, or simply helped make your night a little softer, then I'm grateful you were here. And wherever you are in the world tonight, I hope you rest well, sleep peacefully, dream deeply, and may your own fire, whatever it may be, continue to burn brightly. Good night.